Welcome to Research Matters with Unda and Kuda, an online show that is all about communicating the research taking place at NUST in efforts to promote the university's research agenda and the impact thereof.
Welcome to Research Matters with Unda and Kuda, another episode right here on NUST FM. Now, of course, I'll let my wonderful co-host, that is Kuda, introduce our guest for this week.
Thank you so much, Unda. As always, it's so great to be here. Now, our guest this morning is Prof Vera De Cauwer. I had to pronounce that. I had to practice pronouncing that. Now, she's an associate professor in the Department of Natural Resources right here at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Now, Prof, we just want to welcome you to our chair. Welcome to NUST FM right here with Kuda and Unda. Prof, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Prof De Cauwer? I'm saying that very slowly so that I get it right.
Yeah. Very close, Kuda. Good morning. I'm a forestry engineer. I've been at NUST for more than 15 years, a long time. And in that time, I have done mainly forest research, closely to what I studied. But I'm also lecturing. My main courses are related to GIS to remote sensing, the use of satellite images.
Now, is this something that you always knew you wanted to do, or when did you realize this is my path, this is my passion?
I wanted to do biology, actually, but then I realized I didn't want to lecture at high school. So then someone came in my last year of high school talking about bioengineering. Actually, it was called agriculture engineering. And then I realized that's applied science, applied biology, I'll do that. And I ended up in forestry because I always liked plants. So I always knew it would be something with plants.
All right. Now, I see that you have a love for plants. Where did that come from? Back home, did your mom always have like plants and these beautiful trees? Or is it just an interest you picked up on as you went?
Like, take us back to when you were a toddler, even. You know, I love it when people tell stories and they're like, I always knew what I wanted to do. I'm like, I didn't know. I just kind of figured it out along the way. Yeah.
I actually grew up in a city in Belgium, Antwerp, and everyone there has very small gardens. So not like here in Namibia with a large urban, or you just walk out into the bush. There were houses and streets everywhere. So maybe that's why I wanted to work with plants. Whenever we got out and got to the forest, that was for me fantastic. It's like finding your soul back. Mm-hmm. A lot of people like to walk in the forest. I did that very much. So,
now, what are some of the subjects that say one needs to say you're talking to a first year right now, and they're like, I like that. That sounds interesting. What do they have to look out for? What do they have to study? Not even a first year, actually. Let's step back a little bit. High school. What subjects do you need to focus on?
Sciences. You definitely need all the sciences: physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology, of course, the most important one. And you need interest in it, because it doesn't help to go and study something you do not like. You must be motivated and passionate.
Great. Now, we know you're involved in a lot of projects right now. Off air, we were talking and you were saying your passion is just being out in the field. What are you working on right now?
Most of my research is on Namibia's forests and woodlands, so mainly in the north. We are trying to see how the status of the forest, how quick are the trees growing, how much wood is there in the forest, are the forests regenerating well, because most people think forests can take care of themselves, but people are continuously extracting wood, grasses, fruits, and at some point there's so much extraction, actually the forest can't cope. And so we try to study that and see when that balance is reached and what managers can do to counteract that. So forest research is my most important thing, but I'm involved in many other projects as well. We often have to go where the funding is.
That actually makes a lot of sense, because without funding, then essentially you can't do much, right?
Absolutely. Now, Prof, would you say that your research or your projects have anything tangible at this point to say you go into communities and you educate people on how to plant, or rather you plant with them just to make or balance out, your studies, but also making sure that the forestry, continues without people just chopping down, but rather also plowing back and planting trees and so forth.
Yeah, so with several of our students, we have worked on trying to assist tree regeneration. So you try to collect seeds, see what you have to do to make them germinating, and then only plant the trees in the forest, or rather around your homestead, because most of the Namibian trees, northern Namibia, are very difficult to plant in the garden. We have been doing experiments. We also hold workshops where we show how to regenerate these trees, and we try to see if people realize how old these trees are in the forest, how long it takes for a tree to grow up. And that can often take more than 100 years, of course. And maybe I should tell of another project where we work with succulent plants. This is, So we have a project where we try to see if we can use succulent plants as a new way of dryland agriculture. So succulent plants are those who can store a lot of water in leaves or roots. For example, a pineapple, agave, all the euphorbias. A prickly pear is a well-known example, but a lot of them are not indigenous to Namibia. So we're trying to find indigenous alternatives because we think it can feed into a new way of doing agriculture. For example, you can because they're so water efficient, they can even grow in very dry climates and generate a lot of biomass, which can be used for many things, like fodder or creation of biogas or fertilizers. And we want to demonstrate that to communities with our students.
I think that's actually quite interesting. I'm always excited when there's always a multidisciplinary approach to something. Like now you spoke about the plants and how it relates to agriculture and the fodder and so forth. And I think that is very exciting. Now, when it comes to working with students, can you just tell us a little bit about that? Are you currently working with master's students, PhD students? How's that going?
Yeah, I'm currently supervising 11 students, and six of them are PhD students. And a lot of them, because we are natural resource management, have to go in the field. That's expensive in Namibia, especially if you have to travel to the north. So because of all these students having to do research and travel, we are also having to get research funding from projects, externally funded projects, so these students can actually pay for the research. We make sure there's funding for their fieldwork. So we have students at the moment that work, for example, on these succulent plants and looking at the photosynthesis pathways that these plants are using, because they use specialized ways to cope with these dry conditions.
Oh, wow. Now, real quick, before we go for a break, I can see Unda's about to go for a break, but before we do that, I was reading up on a couple of things and we're talking about plant extinction, indigenous plant breeding. What happens, say, in a very dramatic, this is now quite dramatic, in a very dramatic setup, if all of this work that you do stops? So your work and every other forester in the world stops right now. What would happen? In other words, this is just me trying to find out, why does this matter?
Well, managers need information for managing forest or conservation areas. So if they want to propose management measurements, they need that information. If you do not know if Namibia's forest trees are dying slower than they're regenerating or quicker than they're regenerating, you do not realize you might have to plant trees, or otherwise tomorrow there will be no trees in the forest and no forest. This is just an example. So the information we generate is essential for managers to make decisions for the future.
All right, now we'll head on a musical break. Thank you so much, Prof, for that first enlightening segment. But we'll head on to a requested jam by yourself. But maybe before we do, you can just give us a background as to why you chose this song for submission. Is it a song you dance to?
I don't know. I gave many songs.
So this one is Stroma, yes.
Oh, Stroma is a Belgian singer, so also from Belgium, and I love his songs. They're fantastic. And some of the parts of his music are even bought by other singers. So you'll maybe you recognize it.
All right, there you have it. Do stick and stay to NUST FM, as we will be back on the flip side with more Research Matters.
So if you've just joined us, you are listening to Unda and Kuda live right here on Research Matters. And again, if you've just joined us, where have you been? But no problem, you're right here on time. Now, Prof, we've got Prof De Cauwer. Cowers? Did I say that right? No?
Yeah, Prof De Cauwer's.
Prof
Very
De
good.
Cauwer's in the house. No, Prof, we cannot talk, when you talk about research, we cannot not talk about publications. What are some of the things you've published on? What are some of the topics? What are you've been focusing on? What are you passionate about? What do you like writing about?
Well, most of my research has been, articles have been on forests, but I must say I liked my last article. It was something very different. It was the flora we found on the tops of the mountains in northern Namibia, in the Kaoko Lands Center of Endemism. We visited 3 mountain tops, 2 in Angola and 1 in Namibia, and some of these mountains have actually Serra Cafema in Angola, Iona National Park, has never been visited by researchers before. We were the first. So to write an article on that was very exciting. We were a large team, eight people. So.
Oh, wow, I can see how you're lighting up on that one.
Yeah. I was about to say, Prof, when you look at your research, how do you get to that point where you say, this is where I need to go? This is definitely something I need to research. How does that light bulb come to you?
Well, if it's on forests, it's clearly northern Namibia.
Yeah.
But for the rest, it's often, because we can't study everything, we would love to study all plants in Namibia, but we can't. So we just go to the areas for which we find funding. And one of our last projects was in Kunene, and that's why we studied that area, which worked out very well because there are so many endemic plants that you can only find in Namibia or neighboring southern Angola.
So most of it then would be guided by the funding that you receive.
Correct.
Oh, all right. Now, Prof, if we had to look at what you would say to your younger self, what advice would you give to your younger self when you're looking at when you started research? What would you say to yourself? Like, I should have done A, or I could have done better in this way, or what advice would you have?
That's a difficult one. Maybe I would say try to do your PhD before you get children.
I love that very practical advice, because children have a PhD on
Distraction.
their own. And a PhD on their own. So you're doing 2 in one go.
Yeah, so my second child was born while I was doing a PhD, and that was hectic. So, but like many people in Namibia, I started the PhD later because I did other things. I actually worked outside of research, which is not a bad thing, because if you go and stand in front of the class and you only know the academic world, you have never been anywhere else, how can you talk to the students about the world outside of academics, how what you have learned is applied in, let's say, the real world.
Theory, yeah. So you need the real world.
So it's a compromise, trying to work outside of academics, but if you want to do research, try to start that PhD early enough.
That's great. Now, just to take you back a little bit, when you spoke about your publications and research and everything, you spoke about Angola, which brought to mind one of the projects that I actually know you from, if I can put it that way, was Siona, which was focused on strengthening cross-border ecosystems management and so forth. What does that mean? Can you just take us back a little bit? I know the project has wrapped up now. What was Siona all about?
It was about the co-design of conservation monitoring tools in a transfrontier area, Iona Skeleton Transfrontier Park. So that means we were developing tools to help ecosystem management and wildlife conservation. We did this in close cooperation with the Faculty of Computing and Informatics. Professor Heike Winschiers was their lead, and so they focused on the co-design of the tools, and we gave the input on the natural resource management thing. So we worked together with the Himba, for example, a lot to see if we could work together to monitor wildlife or plants.
That's awesome. Now, I think it's so great to always have, again, that multidisciplinary approach working with indigenous communities, because essentially it's not just about the researchers and being in one area. You do need to engage the communities and to know what it is that they need and to get them involved. Essentially, that's how you get output that has impact, right? No, great. Now, something that I just thought of as we were chatting, you spoke about one thing that leads the kind of research that you do has a lot to do with funding. Say to emerging researchers that really want to get in on the action, just a few tips. Where do you find funding? Who do you speak to? Which door do you knock on? How do you go about it? Say right from the very basic, and you're trying to get in there.
It's hard work. Don't give up, because it's a lot of trial and error. I've been writing project proposals since I was 24, and a lot of the project proposals never got funding, but that's part of the game, and you spend a lot of time on it. And in the beginning it will take more time, but the more you do it, the better you get. So it's basically, you can't shortcut this one. You'll have to go through it the hard way.
That's awesome. I think it's great to hear it like that, to say, and again, just a basic life lesson, that you must persevere, you must keep at it. You're going to get those rejections, but if you really want those doors to open, you got to keep knocking, right?
I mean, rejection comes in different forms. You just have to take that W at some point. And W for the millennials? Whoa, where's that word? For us, I'm a 2000s.
What W does?
It's called a win. So you take a lot of losses, which we call L's, but at some point you will take a win and get that funding for that research project. So
I like that. I was completely lost there. So I was
like what are you talking about?
I'm learning too.
All right. Now, Prof, if it is all done and dusted, what is the one difference, or what are some of the differences that you hope to have achieved in society by the end of your research?
Say 20 years
20 years from now.
What do you envisage?
I hope I have created knowledge and tools that can be really applied on the ground in Namibia and help people get a better life or a better environment. So that some things can really be applied.
All right, now that brings us to the end of Research Matters with Unda and Kuda. But of course, that's not the complete ending, because we have one more requested jam by our professor right here in studio. But of course, don't forget, you can catch us every second Tuesday right here on NUST FM. But you can also catch up on all the episodes in case you've missed them on that is our research, innovation and partnerships at NUST Facebook pages, as well as LinkedIn and on the NUST FM Facebook and Instagram pages. Our podcasts are also available on YouTube. Now, Prof, maybe you can just enlighten me on this title. This one is called Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. What does that mean? Is it a Dutch song?
No, definitely not. I don't know really what it means, but it was one. I loved it. We danced a lot on it. Not danced, but we listened a lot to it as university students.
Okay, so this is just sort of taking you back, down memory lane.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for joining Unda and Kuda on our research show this morning. But of course, we will have so much more. And maybe you can come another time and tell us all about the projects that you will have running as well. But for now, that's the end of Research Matters with Unda and Kuda. Do stick and stay to NUST FM.